It would live. I don't know why. Okay. Yeah, much better now. Yeah. Today I just want to go through a few videos. Um, Probably not going to be on. Was it 9:48? Be on like probably like an hour or something like that. Um, yeah, there was this video I really wanted to watch. I saved it. Watch it with you guys. I'll pull up the chat in a second. I don't know if anyone's saying anything yet. Oh, what's up, Ashley? Finally here. It's been so long since you've been here. Can't believe it. Took weeks for you to show up finally. Oh my god, my computer's being weird. Probably should have reset it so it'd be mobbing. Yeah, we'll get into this real quick. I'm gonna this issue about the audio, not the. I can hear the other stuff. I just can't hear.
Today, we are faced, I think, with the approach of what may be called the ultimate revolution, the final revolution, where a man can act directly on the mind-body of his fellows. Well, needless to say,
As well, because I think his predictions of society were much more accurate than Orwell's were.
some kind of direct action on human mind bodies has been going on since the beginning of time. But this has generally been of a violent nature. The techniques of terrorism have been known from time immemorial, and people have employed them with more or less ingenuity, sometimes with the utmost crudity, sometimes with a good deal of skill acquired by a process of trial and error, finding out what the best ways of using torture, imprisonment, constraints of various kinds. But as I think it was Metternich said many years ago, you can do everything with bayonets except sit on them.
That's actually a Napoleon quote. That's pretty funny.
That if you are going to control any population for any length of time, you must have some measure of consent.
So this idea right here, it parallels a lot of um, what Kim Wu said about rebellion. I think summed up rebellion in the best way possible because think about any sort of rebellion, think about any sort of revolution. Like the moment the revolution wins, the moment the revolution takes over, like then the new oppressive government begins and you're back to square one. Like there's always some hint of change, there's always some movement for change in society, and it's usually just a loop, it's usually just a cycle. Like it's very funny to see like Robespierre be talking about tyrants when he became one of the most tyrannical leaders of all time. But it's just trends you see in history. It's the same thing with the Bolshevik Revolution. It's the same thing with depending on. I don't think America is tyrannical. I think it has its flaws, but a lot of older rebellions were just let's replace this with something way worse.
It's exceedingly difficult to see how pure terrorism can function indefinitely. It can function for a fairly long time, but I think sooner or later you have to bring in an element of persuasion, an element of getting people to consent to what is happening to them.
So if you've read 1984, I'm assuming most people have read 1984 and not Brave New World, simply because you hear it's literally 1984. 1984 focuses on the control that is basically forced upon people. That's through censorship, that's through the cameras, there's surveillance, all of this sort of stuff. It's like done through fear and done through force and threat of violence. Whereas Brave New World, you're kind of free, but you're subverted to think that like how do I say this? Like there's just a lot of vulgarity. There's a lot of emphasis on like not having relationships, not being tied to someone. Like everything is about the community, nothing's about the individual. Consumerism, like what you see right here. It's a very interesting idea. I think it parallels much better with the destruction of or the decay of society. I wouldn't say destruction, but like the decay of morality, the decay of society into something that is more controlled than like we see 1984. I mean, obviously there's elements of 1984 that are going on in this world, but I think you see much more of subversion in the West.
Well, it seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in process of
Thanks,
developing
Fluffy Kitty.
a
How's it
whole
going?
series of techniques which will enable the
Is this you,
controlling
Fluffy Kitty?
oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably always will
Or is
exist,
this you, this one?
to get people actually to love their servitude. This is seems to me the ultimate in malevolent.
Tim Dillon said this best. Um, if you don't know who Tim Dillon is, you should look him up. He was like, whoever did the pandemic is an idiot. 'Cause nobody was protesting when they could go eat at Applebee's. But you close the Applebee's and now everyone's freaking out and now everyone wants to overthrow the government. It's like it's one of the funniest quotes I've ever heard.
Revolution, shall we
We
say,
will react to Tim
and that
Dillon at
there
some
seems
point.
to be a general movement in the direction of this kind of ultimate revolution, this method of control by which people can be made to enjoy a state of affairs which, by any decent standard,
Think
they
about when TikTok got banned. How many people were so upset? I find that so funny. Like, I mean, like I use TikTok, it's all right. I mean, I don't use it right now because I don't have it on my phone, but like, it's all right. It's nothing special. It's just a social media app. But like to have people like having mental breakdowns and being like, "We need this back," and like crying over it, that I don't understand. Like nothing is. I mean, there's a few things important to me that I would be upset about if I lost them, but it's like nothing is that important where it like stops my life from going on. You can't focus? What? Well, I'm gonna turn off my air. Muted, but okay, it's back on. I swear, whenever I want my air to be on, it's off, and then the second I want it to be off, it turns on. Like it has a mind of its own. It like knows or something. All right.
ought not to enjoy. This, I mean, the enjoyment of servitude. And first, let me talk about a little bit about the improvement even in the
Woke you
techniques
up?
of terrorism.
How do I wake you
I
up?
think there have been improvements. Pavlov, after all, made some extremely profound observations, both on animals and on human beings. And he found, among other things, that conditioning techniques applied to animals or humans in a state either of psychological or physical stress.
The thing I don't think people get about this is it's not necessarily like nefarious. It's not necessarily planned, but it is. We are dumbing ourselves down. We are making ourselves more and more alike, and we're removing individuality, and we're leading to a brave new world-esque world, for lack of better words. And the only thing we can do is like realize this and start, you know, thinking for yourself. Start, educating yourself. Start, doing things because you want to do it, not because it's popular. Like the saddest thing that I think plagues most people is that most of their lives they're living for other people. Most of their lives, like their hobbies, the things they really enjoy, the things that they think they love, like do they really love it or are they doing it for someone else? And the answer is for most people, they're doing it for someone else. Like most of the decisions I've made in my life were for someone else. It's only recently when I actually started making decisions for myself. And even at that, I have to constantly evaluate and constantly look and be like, is this for me? Am I going to be happy in 10 years if I follow this path? And you have to check yourself. It's something that you always have to deal with. I think this, yeah, yeah. I don't um like people always talk about 1984. I I really don't like that example now. Back in the day when I first read 1984, I was like, oh my God, it's only 1984, but Brave New World matches it much better.
Sank in, so to say, very deeply into the mind body of the creature and were extremely difficult to get rid of, that they seem to be embedded more deeply than other forms of conditioning. In this
I don't even know if it's necessarily like conditioning. I don't know if conditioning is the right word. It's just conformity. Like it's never been less accepted to be your own person today. Like you immediately have 50% of the country that likes you if you support a single politician. You know what I mean? You immediately have friends if you are of this certain ideology. Like I just don't like the conformity. I don't like the lack of individuality. You know what I mean? Like it's fine to be part of a group, but don't have that group become your identity. That's the weird part of me. Like don't be defined by one thing. Don't be defined by one idea. Like whatever belief system you have, be willing to disagree with parts of it. Pick and choose what you want. Pick and choose the parts that really speak to you and make you happy.
context, I would like to mention the extremely interesting chapters in Dr. William Sargent's Battle for the Mind, where he points out
I wonder
how
people actually read
intuitively
research stuff
some
quickly
of the
think
great religious
like 2 or 3% of the population probably. And I'm being generous there, I feel like. Even the people that read, I think a lot of people are like so wrapped up in whatever world they're in that it's hard for them to like see the world in different perspectives. It's not so much about like self-education, it's also the ability to view how someone else is approaching things, view how someone else is coming off because it's one thing to go read every single book by Nietzsche, by Jung, by whatever person that you're inspired by, but like it's another thing to like see where someone else is coming from. And that's the big issue with like most intellectuals is I mean, you go to a college, you talk to a professor, they might be brilliant, but can they tell you anything about the world? No, they can't because everything they know is from a book. They have no perception. They have no ability to look through someone else's eyes and see why they have a certain opinion, see why they believe a certain idea, and then lead them to what they think is the right solution. I think this is a skill that's really, really lacking. And this really goes back to like Socrates, Plato, all of these older style of philosophers because I don't know if anybody knows this, but like we don't have any of Socrates' actual writings because he didn't believe writing was a good medium. He believed that discussion and being able to ask questions and get to the root of the issue through that was the greatest form of communication, was the greatest form of gaining knowledge. And think of what we do now today. I mean, most of the discourse is just you turn on whatever news station that you listen to, you get all angry, then you go back home or you go to Thanksgiving and you argue with someone that watches the same sort of news station, but it's on the opposite side, and then nothing gets done, nothing gets solved. And the problem just keeps getting worse because we're just in these echo chambers, we're in these set belief systems, these set ideas, and we're not willing to engage in good faith. Like, that's really a lot of it too. I mean, the moment someone starts to go ad hominem, the moment someone starts to attack your character or attack who you are, like, and not attack your idea, I mean, think of what most quote unquote debates online end up being. It's just an insult match back and forth. It's very, very frustrating. And it's like, I'd be willing to talk to anyone about anything, but the moment that they start, you know, saying anything that's not about my idea is the moment I just stop responding. I think that's something we really need to focus on. Because like I had a friend today, he was texting me, he's like, he's obviously very Republican, at this point I'm just apolitical. Like any sort of political ideology I have is just infeasible because I like the Federalist Papers. I like the original intentions of the Constitution. That's not going to happen in the modern day and age. No matter what, no matter what side you support, you're not going to get the original foundings of the Constitution, written in the law. But he's like, oh my God, I own the libs, and it was literally just him like arguing with someone online, and I'm like, you didn't really own them. First of all, it was just like both of you people were making points. Both of you people had decent arguments, and there was no agreement. There was no like, hey, we disagree on this, but now we can come together and now we can grow from it. This is very dumb. We live in a world of hate right now. We don't live in a world of hate right now. There's a very vocal minority of people that are very angry. The vast majority of people are just trying to live life. The vast majority of people are, just trying to get through things. And it's amplified the amount of hatred in the world because think of the people that are most active on social media. It's not the people that are healthy. It's not the people that, are going to leave angry comments. Like the people that are leaving all of these nonsense comments, trying to strike up an argument, trying to just debate online and online. Like it's just angry people. It's just broken people that don't have a real life to go back to. That's really all it is. We're living in hate. I'm not living in hate, man. You gotta stop perceiving the world that way. Because the moment you start to perceive the world that way is the moment you give up on it. If you continue to see the world is full of hate, then you're going to continue to see hate. Start appreciating the good. For however much bad there is, there's this equal amount of good, and just focus on the good. Like there's fucked up people everywhere. There's people that are going to hate you just because of a certain characteristic you have. You know what I mean? And it's like, why not just focus on the good stuff? Why not focus on the good in your community instead of focusing on the bad? It's making the problem much, much worse by simply just focusing on everything bad.
Teachers, leaders of the past, hit on the Pavlovian method. He speaks specifically of Wesley's method of producing conversions, which were essentially based upon a technique of heightening psychological stress to the limit by talking about hellfire, and so making people extremely vulnerable to suggestion, and then suddenly releasing this stress by offering hopes of heaven. And this is a very interesting chapter of showing how completely, on purely intuitive and empirical grounds, a skilled natural psychologist, as Wesley was, could discover these
I get what you're saying. It's just like why dwell on things you can't change? You know what I mean? Like you'll be able to change the people that are so narrow-minded that they hate someone for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like just deal with the people that are happy. Deal with the people that are good. Deal with the people that are worth trying to save. Because you can't save everybody. Save the good ones.
Pavlovian methods. Well, as I say, we now know the reason why these techniques worked,
That's
and
how I feel right now. I'm
there's
so
no doubt
tired.
at all that we can, if we want to, uh, carry them much further
What are these
than was
drawings?
possible in the past. And of course, in the recent history of brainwashing, both as applied to prisoners of war and to the
It's not a pessimistic view. Okay. Think of the most closed-minded person ever. Would it be worth you spending the rest trying to open them up to a new possibility? Or would the time be better spent, helping 100 people that are willing to accept your help? I mean, it's just simple realities. It's like, I hope a lot of people change. I hope the person that I know that is the most stubborn, the most arrogant, the most annoying, like, I hope they change. But the answer is like, they need to show signs that like they're willing to change before I help them, before I reach out my hand. You know what I mean? I try one time, I try two times. After that, like, you gotta ask. You know what I'm saying?
Lower personnel
I don't,
within
I
the
don't think it's necessarily pessimistic. I think it's just a more realistic view. Like, I can spend my time doing much more good if I focus on people that are good versus people that are trying to be bad.
Communist Party in China, we see that the Pavlovian methods have been applied systematically and evidently with extraordinary efficacy. I mean, I think there can be no doubt that by the application of these methods, a very large army of totally devoted people has been created. The conditioning has been driven in, so to say, by kind of psychological iontophoresis into the very depth of the people's being and has got so deep that
I hear what you're saying. I mean, one third of the population. Yeah, I try to reach out. I think you got to try. If you try, it's the best you can do. You know what I mean? It's like think of like the people that like you've tried to help for years, and you see them going like, down a dark path, and eventually you're like, I can't go there with you. Like you have to go on your own. You have to find out for yourself that this is a bad path. Like I've had a ton of people in my life that have made the decision, and it's just like it breaks my heart every day. But it's like I can't ruin my life to try to help you. Like I can't watch you ruin your life and ruin my life as well. So
it's very difficult for it ever to be rooted out. And these methods, I think, are a real refinement on the older methods of terror because they combine methods of terror with methods of acceptance, method that the person who he is subjected to a form
there, I mean,
of terroristic stress, but
I don't
for the
think that's
purpose of
exactly what that
inducing
meant, but
a kind of voluntary quotes acceptance of the state and the psychological state into which he has been driven and the state of affairs within which he finds himself. So that, as I say, there has been, I think, a definite
one of the scariest things is like when you realize how powerful your attention is, and then you realize how much of it you waste. Like the thing I'm really trying to fix right now, this is going to be the next thing I really put my mind to. But I mean, like even for example, like it doesn't take me long to film a video. It takes me like 5, 10 minutes. If I mess up, maybe 15. If I write something, it takes me 20 minutes if I'm in a really good state where it's just flowing. And it's like, how much time do I waste every day going on Instagram? And then after I'm on Instagram, I put it down and then I can't get my mind off of whatever I just saw for the next 5 minutes. And then it's like 10, 20 minutes. I'm taking like a 10, 20 minute break from actual productive work of how many times a day? And it's just like I have no excuse to be upset about myself because of not being where I want to be. Because it's like I have the ability. I just have to put it down on paper. I just have to get it out. And it's like I'm literally shooting myself in the foot every single day. It's very frustrating when you start realizing these things. And it's like if you're not where you want to be, the surefire way to get there is simply just focus on whatever it is for a day straight. I promise you, if you focus on a singular idea for a day straight without any distractions, you will get the answer. Like, why do you think Tesla? Why do you think Einstein? Why do you think any of these old philosophers or old mystics or any of these sort of people, why do you think they could come up with such tremendous discoveries out of thin air? It's not because they had the science, it's not because they had the tools, it's not because they had computers, it's simply because of their imagination. I feel like I learned something with all my interactions, like me being here and learning. Do you mean interactions in life or just being here? I mean, I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you so much. That's cool. But I mean, as a whole, you should try to take something away from everybody. I think everybody has something to teach you, even if it's just a negative example, even if it's just, hey, this person did this and got that result. I think if you're introspective enough and you really think about things enough, you can learn a lot from every single person you deal with.
definite improvement, shall we say, even in the techniques of terrorism. Well, then we come to the consideration of
Okay,
other
okay.
techniques, of
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. That's why I asked.
non-terroristic techniques for inducing consent and for inducing people to love their servitude. First of all, there are the methods connected with straight suggestion and hypnosis. I think we know much more about this subject than was known in the past. People, of course, have always known.
All hypnosis is stop attacking Insta. No, my Instagram is literally like I don't know how to describe it, but like I ruined it years ago. Like my Instagram is either literally the stupidest shit you will ever see, like like just some of the like dumbest content you'll ever see. Like there's one guy that pops up into my feed and he like edits his videos and it's like the shittiest editing you've ever seen. And it's like him like doing like some exercise in the gym and there's like fire behind him and it's like there's zero likes on it. There's literally zero likes on it and this guy comes up on my feed all the time. I don't I don't watch it for more than a split second, but this guy always comes up. Like, why am I getting shit like it's like pure schizophrenia is my Instagram. And it's like for years I was sending people stuff and being like, oh, this reminds me of you. So it's just broken. I literally can't use it. Like on social media, I don't learn on Snap. Yeah, I don't I deleted Snapchat like years ago. I just thought it was so fucking stupid. I mean, like I just broke all my streaks and I'm like, okay, I have no reason to be on this anymore. It was just I don't care what people are doing on a daily basis. They already post enough on their Instagram. I see it there. Am I gonna have to see it twice? Like I don't want to see anybody that I added on Snapchat years ago. I don't care. Their algorithm is terrible. Like the videos they show, they're so clickbaity, they're so like NPC nonsense. Like it's god awful. Like do people still use Snapchat? Like is that still a thing? I have no idea. I genuinely haven't used it in years, and my life has gotten so much better. I remember that one that used to be a thing when everyone was like streaks, and like there'd be people I met once had a streak with, and I just kept a streak going, like for no reason. It's like why? Why? Why am I gonna keep a streak with someone I don't like? I barely know. Like it makes no sense. Wow, that's crazy, fluffy kitty. Damn.
Known about suggestion, and although they didn't know the word hypnosis, they certainly practiced it. But we now, I
What do you think
think,
about
know
TikTok?
pretty clearly the sort of statistical structure of a
It is
population
what
in
it is,
regard
man.
to
It has the
its
best algorithm out of
suggestibility.
everything,
Uh, it's very
but
interesting when you look at
like
the
crying about
findings
it
in
to me is
different fields.
crazy.
I mean, in the field of hypnosis, in the field of
Like
administering
why
placebos,
why
for
are like full
example,
grown adults like
in the
sad about
field
an
of
app? Like
general
shouldn't that tell you
suggestion,
something about your life? Shouldn't that
in
like be a
states of
sign that you need
drowsiness
to
or of light
work on other
sleep,
things?
you will find the same sorts of orders of magnitude continually cropping up. You will find, for example, that the experienced hypnotists will tell one that the number of people, the percentage of people who can be hypnotized with the utmost facility, just like that, is about 20.
Hypnosis is literally just impressing your subconscious in a meditative state. We do it on low levels all day long. Anytime you're listening to music, low key hypnotizing yourself. And the interesting thing about hypnosis is that Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung started out in hypnosis. So there is like a real scientific basis for it. It's not really well respected today, simply because um, this is what Jung said about it. Basically, it's only temporary. So like you can make great, tremendous progress with it, but it's not going to last forever. Your subconscious is eventually going to reset. So it's something you're going to have to keep doing. Whereas Jung thought you could affect the subconscious on a much deeper level simply by, dream analysis, by framing things in a different way in the subject's mind.
Percent. That about a corresponding number at the other end of the scale are very, very difficult or almost impossible to hypnotize, and that in between there lies a large mass of people who can, with more or less difficulty, be hypnotized, that they can gradually be, if you work hard enough at it, be got into the hypnotic state. And in the same way, the same sort of figures crop up again, for example, in relation to the administration of placebos. A big experiment was carried out 3 or 4 years ago in the General Hospital in Boston on post-operative cases where several hundred men and women suffering comparable kinds of pain after serious operations were given injections whenever they...
Yeah, Trump brought it back, but it's not like a permanent thing yet. Placebos are like the most interesting idea in medicine because it literally proves the power of the mind. Like science says it doesn't understand um why placebo works. Like even if you tell someone that you're giving them a placebo, they still get better at a rate higher than normal. And it's like the power of belief, the power of faith, it carries with it like the most just magical force that has ever existed. I mean, think of the stories of like people that miraculously get cured from terminal illness simply because of their belief, simply because they were like, I'm not going to die to this, I'm going to get better. It's very weird to me that the scientific community as a whole doesn't really embrace this idea, but it makes sense because it's unscientific. But I, I don't know. Shouldn't you be inspired by the ideas of human potential? Like, shouldn't you want to study these things? Maybe there's no money behind it. Maybe that's why. Maybe people won't do the studies that show that simply changing your perception of yourself in relation to the world immediately affects it, immediately affects how people treat you, immediately affects your body language. Very weird. You stand my good sign. Thank you.
asked for them.
Dude, I was driving home like I guess it was like an hour ago. It wasn't even like crazy late, so it was weird to see this kind of be but like it's a green light. There's no crosswalk, like the walk sign isn't on. And this guy's like walking with a bike and this car goes by, doesn't wait for the guy. The guy like pretends to throw his bike at the car, and I thought I was gonna see a full-on fight. I literally just turned. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this right now. Luckily, I don't think it escalated. I think the people were just talking at each other. But I was like, what kind of night is this?
Whenever the pain got
I've
bad, and
seen
the
some crazy
injections,
shit living
50% of the
here.
time were of morphine, and 50%...
Like, it wasn't as cold as it is now, thankfully, because maybe this guy would have got frostbite. But like around the corner from my apartment, this dude is in the middle of the road with his pants down. I'm just like, what the fuck is this? And then another time I was driving back with my girlfriend. Oh my God, this is like the worst fucking thing I've ever seen. I'm scarred for life. Fuck this. Fuck this place. This place is fucking ass. Wait till you hear this. I don't even know how to say this without being so vulgar. Like, so there's two homeless guys and one guy was standing and another guy was on his knees. We'll say that. It was a block away from the courthouse. Not even in an alley, literally on the road. And I'm like, where the fuck am I? Like, what the fuck? Oh, yeah. I don't know. I don't even know what to say.
of the time were of distilled water. And about 20% of those who went through the experiment, about 20% of them got just as much relief from the distilled water as from the morphia. About 20% got no relief from the distilled water, and in between were those who got some relief or got relief occasionally. So here again we see the same sort of distribution. And I suspect also that it would not be at all difficult to
Yeah, it
recognize in
was
very
it
early
was the
childhood
worst
who
experience
were
of my life.
those who were extremely suggestible, who were those who were extremely unsuggestible, and who were those who occupied the intermediate space. Quite clearly, if everybody were extremely unsuggestible, organized society would be quite impossible. And if everybody were extremely suggestible, then dictatorship would be absolutely inevitable. I mean, it's very fortunate we have people who are moderately suggestible in the majority and who therefore preserve us from dictatorship, but do permit organized society to be formed. But once
Dude, this guy always
there are
draws
these
the Eye of
difficulties to fight
Sauron
suggestible
every
people,
time
it
he
becomes quite
talks
clear that
about
it is a matter of enormous political
dictatorship or
importance.
anything evil. It's
For
so
example,
funny.
any demagogue who is able to get hold of a large number of these 20% of suggestible people and to organize them
Oh, I
is
wonder
really
who
in a
that
position
is.
to overthrow any government in any country. And I mean, I think this, after all, we've had the most
What are these
incredible
pictures?
example in recent years of what can be done by efficient methods of suggestion and persuasion in the form of Hitler. Anybody who's read, for example, Bullock's Life of Hitler.
If you haven't read The Rebel, Camus' take on authoritarian is some of the most interesting stuff you'll read. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember reading this and being like, damn. And the only reason I'm not going to say is because I don't want to misquote him. It's so interesting. Maybe I'll make a video on this.
Comes forth from this with a sort of horrified admiration for this infernal genius who really understood human weaknesses, I think, almost better than anybody, and who exploited them with all the resources then available. I mean, he knew
It's like a lot
everything.
of
For example,
weird
he knew
occult stuff
intuitively
surrounding
this
this too. There's
Pavlovian
there's
truth
like
that
pretty interesting documentaries about this
conditioning
stuff.
installed in a state of stress or
Um,
fatigue it goes much deeper than conditioning installed at other
I think
times.
even
This
Crowley
was why
was
all his
somewhat
big
involved in
speeches
this.
were
Very
organized
weird
at
how
night.
Crowley's
He
always involved
speaks
in
of this
this kind
quite
of stuff.
frankly, of course, in Mein Kampf. He says this was done solely because people are tired at night and therefore are much less capable of resisting persuasion than they would be during the day.
No,
And
audiobooks are a
in
great,
all his
um,
techniques, he
like if
was
you
using.
struggle reading,
He had discovered
the great thing about
intuitively by
audiobooks is that you can
trial and error
always,
a great many of the weaknesses which we now know about on in a sort of scientific way.
the
I
great thing
think
about
people call
audiobooks is
it
that like you can do it while
the
you're doing
needed.
other stuff.
But the fact
So like if you're
remains
doing the
that this
dishes, if you're
differential
cleaning,
suggestibility,
if you're doing your
this
chores, if you're driving, if you're in the
susceptibility
gym,
to hypnosis, I do think
um, you
is something which
can
has to be considered very
you can
carefully
listen to
in
audiobooks
relation to
and you
any
can learn at the same
kind
time.
of
Maybe you
thought
don't
about
retain as much. Some
democratic
people are like
government.
very
I
on
mean,
it about like
if there
how you
are
don't retain as
20% of the
much,
people
but
who can really be suggested
what's the
into
difference
believing
if you don't
almost
retain
anything,
as
as
much if
evidently
you're
they
like
can be,
filling your head with
then we have to
information?
take extremely
You know what I mean? Maybe you don't
careful
retain as
steps
much,
to
but
prevent
you're
the
replacing
rise of demagogues who will
nonsense music with negative
drive them
messaging
on into
with something
extreme
actually
positions
positive,
and
with something
then
actually
organize them
inspiring.
into very, very
Like the media
dangerous
of audiobooks is,
armies, private.
I'm not even listening to this right now. The media audiobooks is probably one of the best things that you could start consuming. Do I read aloud? No. If I read aloud, I'd read a lot slower. I mean, if you watch any of the videos where I read aloud, I'm like basically dyslexic. I don't know. I can read really fast in my head. I can't read aloud very fast. Um, do I have a book that has good quotes in it next to me? Um, it's dark though. What should I read? We'll read some Nietzsche. And then he struck in a gruesome, gloomy melody. Alas, he trumpeted into my ear like a mournful horn. See, I can't imagine me reading an entire book at that speed. Could never. My reading voice, it's just my normal voice. It's just slower, I feel like. I don't know. My brain does this weird thing when I read out loud, is I try to fill in the next word. I don't know why I do this, because it's like I'm not reading slow. But like I guess I want to read faster to get it over with. So like I try to fill in the next word and then it's just the wrong word and I get stumbled. I'm like,
Armies which may overthrow the government. Well, this, as I say, is in this field of pure persuasion. I think we do know much more than we did in the past, and obviously we now have mechanisms for multiplying the demagogue's voice and image in a quite hallucinatory way. I mean, the television and the radio. Hitler was making enormous use of the radio. He could speak to millions of people simultaneously. I mean, this alone, of course, creates an enormous gulf between the modern and the ancient demagogue. The ancient demagogue could
These
only
images are weird.
appeal to as many people as his voice could reach by the yelling at
These look like
at
AI
his utmost.
generated.
But
I feel like,
the modern demagogue can touch.
bro, this video said about George Orwell. There's not a single mention of Orwell. Dostoevsky, N.A.P. Hall. We'll look at some Alan Watts. All right, this is gonna be a good video, probably.
Well, I have a sort of suggestion,
His voice is like
and
so
that is
clean,
this:
too.
that before we decide either to save the planet or to destroy it, we pause for a moment of silence. I don't mean that kind of grim silence which one observes when somebody says, such and such a famous person has just died, and we'll observe a moment of silence in his honor, and everybody frowns.
One of like the greatest, one of the greatest things that you can learn to appreciate is like just being able to calm down your mind and not think about anything and like that feeling. There's so much emphasis that is put on being busy. I mean, think of a job you had where like you would get yelled at if you weren't doing something. Like you would find work even if there wasn't work to do. And that idea is slowly eating away at us like day after day after day after day. Like, I mean, we're not meant to toil at all times of the day. We were meant to be patient. We were meant to not be stressed at all times of the day. And so many people are constantly living in this what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. And like you gotta give yourself time to calm down. You gotta give yourself time to relax and let your brain just
And thinks very serious thoughts. That's not silence at all. I mean real silence, in which we stop thinking
you can see my third eye
and
just because my head's shiny.
experience reality as reality is. Because after all, if I talk all the time, I can't hear what anyone else has to say. And if I think all the time, and by that I mean specifically talking to yourself subvocally inside your skull, if I think all the time, I have nothing to think about except thoughts.
Think of when you're stressed out for being stressed out. Think about when you're angry for being angry. These are just like thought loops that you're caught in. It's because you force yourself your whole life to have your mind on. Your mind's just a tool. It's just a way to observe things. But your mind isn't everything. Your mind isn't you. You're so much more than your mind. You're your spirit, you're your soul, you're your body, and your mind is just one function of these elements. Osho, I think it was Osho that said this. Think of your body as, where everything's housed. Your mind is housed in the body, and then above that is the spirit, and the spirit's encapsulating everything. I think I explained that wrong, but it goes body, mind, spirit. These are the three dimensions that we can fulfill. And a lot of people really just fulfill the physical, they might fill the intellectual, but very rarely do they fill the soul. And the soul's the easiest to fill. The soul's the easiest because you don't need anything. You don't need anything except yourself. But in sacrificing every part of yourself to get material wealthy, sacrificing every aspect of yourself to become intelligent, to get all these degrees, to become distinguished, to be all high and mighty, like you're sacrificing who you truly are, sacrificing your body, probably. Like, I think Thomas Sowell says it best. He's talking about economics and politics, but he says there's no solutions, there's only trade offs. And you need to evaluate what's most important. Is it worth it to have a giant house but no family to spend time with and enjoy time with? Or would you rather have much more modest means and actually see your kids grow up, actually have a good bond with your wife? actually like be able to express love, and you're not just, I gotta go, I have this meeting, you know what I mean? Like it's very weird to me that we don't even grasp these ideas.
And so I'm never in touch with the real world. Now, what is the real world? Some people have the theory that the real world is material or physical. I say it's made of kind of a stuff. Other people have the theory that the real world is spiritual or mental. But I want you to point out that both those theories of the world are concepts.
It's
They are
everything.
constructions.
I think it's an idea that people really don't embrace nowadays. Um, think about it like this. What's the goal of science? The goal of science is to perceive everything about the universe, to explain everything, to make things make complete sense, and then create models, and then use these models to basically take advantage of these laws so that we can have cooler inventions. I would say that's a pretty generous, pretty good definition of science. Back in the day, there was the belief that some things were unexplainable, and there was like a reverence for it. Like, science will never be able to perfectly map consciousness. It will never be intricate enough to ever explain what makes a human human, but we all know what it is. And it's like we can all appreciate that. We can all appreciate the beauty of life. We don't have to quantify it. We don't have to define it. We don't have to make it so rigid, so boring. I think this is Osho. Yeah, Osho said this. Basically, when you try to define a rose, it loses all its beauty. A scientist could tell you every single chemical that is combined to create that rose, but is it a rose anymore? Does it have that beauty? Does it smell good? Does it have that fragrance? When you walk into a room and see roses, do you smile? You know what I mean? Like when you break things down, when you try to define them, it loses the essence of it. And this is what we're doing with a lot of life. This is what we're doing with a lot of things that we see. Even yourself too, when you define yourself as something, when you say I'm this, I'm that, I'm Democrat, I'm Republican, I'm Christian, I'm this, I'm that, like when you put yourself in a box, you yourself.
Of words.
I'm glad I look like a
And the real world is
ninja.
not
That's
an
funny.
idea, it is not words.
10-year-old me would be so
Reality
happy.
is
Dude, I think I was a ninja for like 3 years in a row for Halloween. And then one time I was at my school had like they'd all dress up and the parents would go, and my pants fell down, and I was so embarrassed. It's the worst day of my life. I don't know why I'm telling this story. That was like a repressed memory you just brought up. Thanks for like I'm gonna have nightmares now because of you. Do you ever like I don't know if this is just me, but the more like memories that come into my head, the more I'm like,
you'll find, therefore,
oh,
that
I
if you
remember this
get with
happened.
reality,
And then I just laugh. I'm like,
all sorts
this is
of
why I'm so
illusions
fucked up.
disappear. And I will mention several illusions that
If you
have
get with
not
reality, all sorts
this
of
kind of
illusions.
existence. Let's begin with some very down-to-earth ones, like money. Money is a very useful method of accounting. It is a measure of wealth in the same way as inches are measures of length and grams measures of weight.
It's really weird to me, um, just how many people in my generation are, just how many people in my generation are like so obsessed with money, like they will sacrifice every single thing for like a piece of paper. And not to say that's not important, not to say that like don't go out and set yourself up financially, set yourself up to lead the life you want to live, but don't make it everything. Don't sacrifice your soul. Some things are worth much more than money. And I mean, just go online, you'll see someone debasing themselves even more and more every single day. Like it, that side of the internet, like the depraved side, the side that will do anything for a bag, is just like you thought it was bad a year ago, and things just continue to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I'm just like, is it worth it? It's like a few $1 million worth whatever respect you had, whatever self-respect you had. I don't think so. Yeah, I think Jung said something like, "Show me a healthy man, and I will cure him for you." There's a story in one of Jung's books. I wish I could remember it, but like basically one of his like the psychologist he was training um was like, "Oh, do a dream analysis on me." And it was like a really fucked up dream. Like his mother was yelling at him and he was like on the floor of the baby covered in poop or something. And like Young was like the dream was basically showing that this dude was on the verge of like a psychotic break and some sort of psychosis. And like he was like, what the fuck? So he like cured the guy really quickly. And then the guy didn't know like how precarious his situation really was. It's so funny. Some of the stories that Jung has is like hilarious. Another one that's I think is hilarious is he's like showing people how to do hypnosis, and this woman walks in on crutches. He he like puts her to sleep by accident, and he can't wake her up for 20 minutes, and there's like 20, 15, 20 people watching. And the second he wakes her up, she screams, "I'm cured," and she walks out of the room without crutches. And then from then on, everyone's like, "Is this guy a fucking magician or something?" Like he immediately had this reputation as like the greatest hypnotist of all time or something. So funny. There's another one. This one involves Freud. It's like basically Jung discovered that this woman had like killed her like toddler or something. Like she had a break or something, and her subconscious wouldn't tell her this. And basically Jung figured out that like if he could ease her into telling this, he could cure her. And then he brings this to Freud as like some amazing discovery. And Freud goes, "That's really interesting. But could you stand spending so much time with such an ugly woman?" It's just like imagine like your psychologist thinking it's like, "I got this miracle here." He's like consulting with another doctor, like, "No, this chick's too fucking ugly. Don't help her." I must have laughed for like 10 minutes after reading that. It's just I don't know. I find this shit way too entertaining.
You cannot eat money. You could have a fantastic quantity of dollar bills and stock certificates on a desert island, and they would be useless to you. What you would need would be food and animals and companions. Money simply represents wealth in rather the same way that the menu represents the dinner.
That's a pretty good analogy.
Only we are psychologically perverted in such a way that some of us would rather have money than real wealth.
Some of us would rather have money than real wealth. Think of like the people that go on Instagram, think of the people that go on Twitter and just flex how rich they are. They buy a super nice car, they buy a super nice house, but they have no sort of way to sustain this income aside from selling a course or selling whatever. And it's like, I don't get it, man. I don't get making all this money just to spend it so that people think you're rich. Like when I have a lot of money, I'm not gonna do that. Sure, I might buy a few things that I'm gonna enjoy. Sure, I might buy a few things that are gonna make me happy, but it's never gonna put me in a financial situation where it's like I can't survive. Like I want to make money so that I can do whatever I want with the rest of my life. I want to make money so I can not have to go into work, or I can retire young, or I can go travel the world. Like, there's a lot of things I want to do, and I'm not gonna waste it trying to please other people. I'm gonna try to please myself. All right. Don't take that in the wrong context. I don't think it would have sounded that way unless I
But you
started
know,
laughing afterwards.
you cannot drive in 5 cars at once, even though they be Cadillacs. You cannot live simultaneously in 6 houses or eat 12 roasts of beef at one meal. There is a limit to what one can consume.
I know a guy that can eat 12 roasted beef one meal. I have this friend, and he's like more than a foot shorter than me, and he was trying to tell me that we were the same body fat percentage. I was just like, dude, we weigh the same when you're a foot shorter than me. I don't think that's how it works. And he was like, yeah, I just hold water weird. And I'm like, like, I don't want to leak his identity. Otherwise, I'd show you guys a picture and you guys would just laugh. Like, I don't want to bully my friend, but man, the copes are just so funny.
So that's one of the sort of confusions I'm talking about. Another
Do people actually watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians?
is that we confuse ourselves as living organisms
Like, is it me
with
or I don't know who watches like reality TV? I don't know who watches like The Masked Singer or American Idol, any of these other shows. Like, like who are these shows pandering to? Even the advertisements. Who watches the advertisements that we see online and like goes, "Oh, I need to buy Coca-Cola. I need to buy this. I need to buy that. Oh, that was so funny. I need to go get it right now." Like, I don't. You watch some. I mean, like some of them I get, some of them I get, but you know what I mean, though. The ones that are like just so clearly faked, so clearly like hyped up. Like how many? You know what I mean? I don't know if that's just me. I'm a hater of all sorts of media, though. Like, I'll watch a movie that is supposedly great, and I'll be like, well, hey, this part wasn't good. This part wasn't good. Like, I don't know. Me starting to be a critic of books is making me so pretentious in real life. I swear, it's so bad. Like I start analyzing things in like a philosophical manner. Like, why this doesn't make any sense? And I'm just like, bro, it's fucking SpongeBob. Why do I care? I swear, it's like ruining my life. It teaches you stuff. What teaches you stuff? Reality TV. One day we should watch episodes of 90 Day Fiance, and I can learn how to get girls through Big Ed. That is my role model. I want to be like Big Ed when I grow up. I'm gonna like chop off my calves, or my shin. I'll be like the same height as him, and then I'll just go like this at all times. There are topics like there was a situation about business. I mean, I guess you can learn some small stuff through that, but I mean, most of what people talk about, like learning business, is like it's not real. Like when you hear someone say like, "Oh, this businessman, this business," it's just like it doesn't really do anything. It's just like sales and having connections. That's really all business is. What are you talking about now? Should I keep streaming? I'm starting to get a little tired. I'm gonna stream again at. I don't want to give a set time because I'm not gonna make it. But as I'm streaming now, I'll be able to stream earlier tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm gonna do a much longer stream, but it's gonna be during the day. So I don't know if you're if you're gonna like be able to catch the whole thing. But it should be a fun one. I'm just like exhausted right now. I don't know. It was a full day. It was one of those days where like I just had to keep doing stuff. I really didn't have like a second to breathe. Um, like most of the day I was running around and just, you know, kind of feel like chilling right now. This is fine. You'll be here? Okay. That's good to hear. I'll send out a notification at some point. I'll try to. What I really have to do is I have to start sending out notifications like probably an hour or two before, so people aren't just like, I didn't know you were even streaming. I have to come up with a better plan for that. But yeah, thanks for having fun. Thanks for asking questions. Thanks for complimenting me pretty much the whole time. It's always nice to have some positivity. I can always count on you for that. Um, have a good rest of your night.